Question 1. Process analysis reveals that a potential sponsor, whose business interests are closely aligned with a specific vocational field, has offered significant funding to Adygei State University. This sponsorship is contingent on the university agreeing to a clause that allows the sponsor to provide pre-exam preparatory materials to candidates applying for programs related to their business. Considering the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations, which approach best upholds the integrity of the admission process? Option A. Accept the sponsorship and the clause, assuming that pre-exam preparatory materials are a standard offering and will not unduly influence the examination outcomes. Option B. Accept the sponsorship but propose to the sponsor that the pre-exam preparatory materials be made available to all applicants equally, regardless of their affiliation. Option C. Reject the sponsorship outright due to the potential for conflict of interest and the appearance of unfair advantage for candidates who might access these materials. Option D. Accept the sponsorship and the clause, but implement internal university checks to ensure the materials are not exam-specific or contain privileged information. The correct answer is A. Accept the sponsorship and the clause, assuming that pre-exam preparatory materials are a standard offering and will not unduly influence the examination outcomes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for funding and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination process. The university administration's pressure to secure a sponsorship deal, even with potential conflicts of interest, requires careful navigation to uphold academic standards and fairness for all applicants. The core of the challenge lies in balancing institutional objectives with the principles of transparency, impartiality, and the prevention of undue influence in admissions. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the entrance examination above all else. This means rigorously assessing the sponsorship proposal against the established regulations and guidelines of the Adygei State University entrance exam, specifically looking for any clauses that could compromise the fairness or objectivity of the examination. If the sponsorship, as proposed, creates even the appearance of a conflict of interest or could lead to preferential treatment for the sponsor's affiliated candidates, it must be rejected or renegotiated to eliminate such risks. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of academic integrity and fair competition, which are implicitly or explicitly part of any reputable university's regulatory framework. The Adygei State University entrance exam regulations would likely mandate a process for evaluating external partnerships that ensures no compromise to the examination's fairness. An incorrect approach would be to accept the sponsorship without a thorough review of its potential impact on the examination's integrity. Its failure to scrutinize the proposal for conflicts of interest or potential for bias directly violates the spirit and likely the letter of the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations, which are designed to ensure a level playing field for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the sponsorship while attempting to implement internal, informal measures to mitigate risks. This is insufficient because it relies on subjective enforcement and does not provide the objective assurance of fairness required by formal regulations. The Adygei State University entrance exam framework demands a proactive and transparent approach to managing potential conflicts, not reactive or informal controls. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic risk assessment. First, identify all potential stakeholders and their interests. Second, consult the specific regulatory framework of the Adygei State University entrance exam to understand the rules governing external partnerships and examination integrity. Third, evaluate the proposed sponsorship against these regulations, focusing on any potential for bias, unfair advantage, or compromise of objectivity. Fourth, if risks are identified, explore options for mitigation through renegotiation or rejection. Finally, document the decision-making process and the rationale behind it to ensure accountability and transparency. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that an applicant for the Adygei State University entrance exam is unsure about the specific documentation required for submission, having only reviewed general guidelines for higher education applications in the region. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework for the Adygei State University entrance exam? Option A. Submitting all documents typically required for university admissions across various institutions in the region. Option B. proceeding with the application using only the documents that are readily available, assuming the university will request any missing items later. Option C. Consulting the official Adygei State University entrance exam regulations and seeking clarification from the university's admissions committee regarding specific documentation. Option D. Relying on personal knowledge of past entrance exam requirements for Adygei State University, assuming they remain unchanged. The correct answer is A. Submitting all documents typically required for university admissions across various institutions in the region. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to Adygei State University's entrance exam by requiring them to navigate the specific regulatory framework governing admissions, rather than general university policies or external educational standards. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying and applying the rules set forth by Adygei State University for its entrance examinations, which may include specific documentation requirements, eligibility criteria, or examination procedures. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these specific regulations can lead to disqualification or admission disputes, highlighting the critical need for precise adherence to the designated jurisdiction's rules. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations. This means consulting the official documentation provided by the university for the current admission cycle, which details all mandatory requirements and procedures. Adherence to these specific university regulations is paramount because they are the sole governing framework for the entrance examination process. Failure to comply with these rules, even if a candidate meets broader educational qualifications, will result in their application being deemed invalid according to the university's own established criteria. An incorrect approach would be to rely on general knowledge of university admissions or the practices of other institutions. This is a regulatory failure because it disregards the specific legal and administrative framework established by Adygei State University. Such an approach demonstrates a lack of diligence in understanding the precise requirements of the jurisdiction in question, leading to potential non-compliance with Adygei State University's unique admission policies. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that common educational practices or the requirements of other universities in the region are applicable. This is an ethical and regulatory failure, as it prioritizes convenience or assumption over the explicit rules of Adygei State University. The university's entrance exam regulations are the definitive guide, and deviating from them, even with good intentions, constitutes a breach of the established process. The professional decision-making process for applicants in similar situations should involve a systematic review of all official Adygei State University entrance exam documentation. This includes seeking clarification from the university's admissions office if any aspect of the regulations is unclear. The core principle is to prioritize and strictly adhere to the specific rules and guidelines provided by the institution conducting the examination, ensuring all requirements are met precisely as stipulated. Question 3. The performance metrics show a slight deviation in the expected distribution of successful applicants from certain regions, potentially impacting the university's outreach goals. As an admissions committee member, what is the most appropriate initial step to address this observation, strictly adhering to the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations? Option A. Consult general best practices for university admissions from international organizations to inform potential changes, without first verifying their applicability or compliance with the specific Adygei State University entrance exam regulations. Option B. Immediately recommend adjustments to the admission criteria for future cycles to better align with performance metric targets. Without a thorough review of the current cycle's adherence to the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations. Option C. Focus solely on increasing recruitment efforts in underrepresented regions for the next admission cycle, disregarding any potential irregularities in the current cycle's adherence to the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations. Option D. Initiate a detailed review of the admission data for the affected regions, comparing applicant qualifications against the established admission criteria and procedures as outlined in the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations, and document any observed discrepancies. The correct answer is D. Initiate a detailed review of the admission data for the affected regions, comparing applicant qualifications against the established admission criteria and procedures as outlined in the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations, and document any observed discrepancies. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical obligations of ensuring fair and transparent admission processes, all within the specific regulatory framework of the Adygei State University Entrance Exam. The pressure to meet performance metrics can create a temptation to deviate from established procedures, making adherence to the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations paramount. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the admission data against the established criteria and guidelines of the Adygei State University Entrance Exam, identifying any discrepancies or potential irregularities without making assumptions about intent. This approach is correct because it upholds the principles of fairness, objectivity, and compliance with the specific regulations governing the Adygei State University Entrance Exam. It ensures that any concerns are addressed through the proper channels and according to the defined procedures, thereby maintaining the integrity of the admission process. An incorrect approach that involves immediately flagging specific applicants for review based on perceived performance metric impact, without a prior objective assessment against the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations, fails to adhere to the principle of impartiality. This could lead to discriminatory practices and undermine the trust in the admission system. Another incorrect approach, which is to overlook minor discrepancies to meet performance targets, directly violates the regulatory framework of the Adygei State University Entrance Exam, which mandates strict adherence to admission criteria. This prioritizes institutional targets over the integrity and fairness of the admissions process. A third incorrect approach, which is to consult external, non-university specific best practices without first referencing the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations, risks misinterpreting or misapplying rules, as admission processes are highly jurisdiction-specific. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory framework, Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations. 2. Objectively assessing the situation against these regulations. 3. Identifying any deviations or potential issues. 4. Consulting the relevant internal policies and procedures for addressing such issues. 5. Escalating concerns through the appropriate university channels for investigation and resolution, ensuring that all actions are documented and compliant with the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Guidelines. Question 4. The audit findings indicate a significant budget deficit at Adygei State University, necessitating immediate financial adjustments. The university administration is considering several proposals to address this shortfall. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for Russian higher education institutions? Option A. Expedite the admission of a larger cohort of students, prioritizing tuition fee revenue over strict adherence to admission criteria to quickly increase income. Option B. Seek an emergency loan from an offshore financial institution with minimal disclosure requirements to cover the immediate deficit. Option C. Implement a rigorous review of all departmental budgets to identify non-essential expenditures and explore opportunities for cost savings, while simultaneously developing a strategic plan for diversified revenue generation through grants and partnerships that support academic programs. Option D. Reduce faculty salaries across all departments by a significant percentage and postpone essential infrastructure upgrades to free up funds. The correct answer is C. Implement a rigorous review of all departmental budgets to identify non-essential expenditures and explore opportunities for cost savings, while simultaneously developing a strategic plan for diversified revenue generation through grants and partnerships that support academic programs. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term integrity of its academic programs and reputation. The audit findings highlight a critical juncture where decisions must be made that balance resource constraints with ethical obligations and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solutions do not compromise the quality of education or violate the principles of fair competition and transparency, which are paramount in the context of university admissions and financial management. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the university's financial situation, identifying areas for cost savings and revenue enhancement that do not negatively impact the core educational mission or violate Adygei State University's internal regulations and relevant federal laws governing higher education in the Russian Federation. This approach prioritizes sustainable financial health through responsible management and strategic planning, ensuring that any decisions are made with transparency and in the best interest of students and the university's academic standing. It aligns with the principles of good governance and fiduciary responsibility expected of educational institutions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate revenue generation through the admission of underqualified students for tuition fees would be ethically unsound and potentially violate regulations. This would undermine the academic standards of Adygei State University, devalue the degrees awarded, and erode public trust. Such an action would disregard the university's responsibility to provide quality education and could lead to disciplinary action from governing bodies. Another incorrect approach, which involves seeking emergency funding through undisclosed or potentially illicit means, would be a severe ethical and legal violation. This bypasses established financial controls and transparency requirements, exposing the university to significant risks, including fraud and corruption charges. It demonstrates a lack of accountability and a disregard for proper financial management procedures. A third incorrect approach, which involves cutting essential academic resources such as faculty salaries or library services to balance the budget, would directly harm the quality of education and research. While cost saving is necessary, it must be implemented strategically to avoid compromising the university's core functions and its ability to attract and retain qualified staff and students. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder consultation, including the university administration, faculty representatives, and potentially student bodies. A comprehensive assessment of the financial situation should be conducted, followed by the development of a range of potential solutions. Each solution must be evaluated against ethical principles, regulatory compliance, and its long-term impact on the university's mission and reputation. Transparency in communication and decision-making is crucial throughout the process. Question 5. Upon reviewing the Adygei State University entrance exam requirements for the essay component, an applicant discovers that the topic aligns closely with a research paper they previously completed for a school project. The applicant considers submitting a slightly modified version of their previous work, incorporating some new ideas, but retaining significant portions of the original text and structure. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for this entrance exam? Option A. Submitting the previous essay with minimal changes, assuming the admissions committee will not notice the overlap. Option B. Submitting a completely new essay, drawing inspiration from their previous research but ensuring all content and structure are original and any borrowed ideas are properly cited. Option C. Submitting a modified version of their previous essay, retaining significant portions of the original text and structure while adding a few new ideas. Option D. Submitting an essay written by a friend who has a strong grasp of the topic, with the applicant claiming it as their own. The correct answer is B. Submitting a completely new essay, drawing inspiration from their previous research, but ensuring all content and structure are original and any borrowed ideas are properly cited. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for an applicant to Adygei State University's entrance exam, specifically concerning the ethical implications of academic integrity and the proper use of information. The applicant must navigate the university's established regulations regarding the submission of application materials and the prohibition of plagiarism. The core of the challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate research and academic dishonesty, and understanding the consequences of misrepresenting one's work. The correct approach involves the applicant independently generating original content for their essay, drawing upon their understanding of the subject matter, and citing any external sources appropriately according to Adygei State University's academic integrity guidelines. This upholds the principle of academic honesty, which is fundamental to the university's admission process and its commitment to fostering a culture of learning and original thought. Adherence to these guidelines ensures that the applicant's submission reflects their genuine abilities and understanding, rather than borrowed material. An incorrect approach would be to copy and paste sections from online resources without proper attribution. This directly violates Adygei State University's regulations against plagiarism, which are designed to ensure that all submitted work is the applicant's own. Such an action demonstrates a lack of integrity and an attempt to deceive the admissions committee, which would likely lead to disqualification. Another incorrect approach would be to paraphrase extensively from external sources without acknowledging the original authors. While this might seem less egregious than direct copying, it still constitutes academic dishonesty as it misrepresents the applicant's original contribution and fails to give credit where it is due, contravening the spirit and letter of academic integrity policies. A further incorrect approach would be to submit an essay that is entirely the work of another person, even if the applicant claims to have assisted in its creation. This is a clear case of academic fraud and would be treated with the utmost seriousness by the university, leading to immediate rejection of the application and potential further disciplinary action. The professional decision-making process for such situations involves a clear understanding of the university's rules and ethical expectations. Applicants should prioritize honesty, originality, and proper citation. When in doubt about the permissibility of using external material, it is always best to err on the side of caution, seek clarification from the university's admissions office, or ensure that all sources are meticulously referenced. The goal is to present authentic work that accurately reflects the applicant's knowledge and effort. Question 6. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a proposed new construction project for Adygei State University offers significant immediate financial advantages and enhances campus facilities. However, preliminary assessments suggest potential negative impacts on a nearby protected natural habitat and could disrupt local community access to a traditional gathering space. Considering the university's role as an educational and community institution, which approach best aligns with responsible decision-making for the Adygei State University entrance exam context? Option A. Focus solely on the cost-benefit analysis that highlights immediate financial gains, dismissing potential environmental and community impacts as secondary to the university's development needs. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive, independent environmental and social impact assessment, actively engage with local community representatives, and incorporate findings into a revised project plan or explore alternative locations before making a final decision. Option C. Proceed with the project as planned, assuming that any environmental or community issues can be addressed through minor adjustments after construction begins. Option D. Prioritize the immediate financial and facility benefits, proceeding with the project after a brief internal review of potential environmental concerns. The correct answer is D. Prioritize the immediate financial and facility benefits, proceeding with the project after a brief internal review of potential environmental concerns. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate financial benefits of a proposed project against potential long-term environmental and social impacts, which are often less quantifiable but critically important. The Adygei State University entrance exam context implies a need to consider the university's role as an educational institution and a member of the local community, necessitating a decision-making process that aligns with ethical principles and any relevant local regulations concerning environmental impact and community welfare. Careful judgment is required to avoid prioritizing short-term gains over sustainable development and the university's reputation. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment that goes beyond immediate financial returns to include a thorough evaluation of potential environmental degradation, impact on local ecosystems, and the well-being of the surrounding community. This approach is justified by the principles of corporate social responsibility and the ethical obligation of institutions to act as responsible stewards of their environment and community. While specific Adygei State University entrance exam regulations might not detail environmental impact assessments, the overarching ethical framework governing educational institutions and their operations would necessitate such considerations. This aligns with a proactive and responsible institutional posture. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the cost-benefit analysis that highlights immediate financial gains, ignoring or downplaying potential negative externalities. This fails to meet ethical standards by potentially causing harm to the environment and community for financial expediency. Another incorrect approach would be to proceed with the project without any form of independent environmental or social impact study, relying only on internal assessments that might be biased towards the project's approval. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for potential long-term consequences, violating principles of transparency and accountability. A third incorrect approach would be to dismiss community concerns as mere opposition without proper investigation, failing to engage stakeholders and address legitimate grievances. This undermines trust and can lead to significant reputational damage and future conflicts. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder consultation, a robust environmental and social impact assessment conducted by independent experts, and a transparent evaluation of all findings. This framework ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and sustainable, reflecting the institution's commitment to its broader responsibilities. Question 7. The assessment process reveals that the faculty members responsible for teaching the subjects tested in the Adygei State University entrance examination have drafted the majority of the questions. Considering the university's commitment to fair and objective admissions, which approach best ensures the integrity and validity of the entrance examination? Option A. Accept the questions drafted by the faculty members as they possess the most direct knowledge of the subject matter and are best positioned to assess the required knowledge. Option B. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the examination by approving the faculty-generated questions with minimal review to meet the admissions timeline. Option C. Implement a rigorous independent review of all drafted questions by a separate committee of university academics not directly involved in teaching the tested subjects, focusing on curriculum alignment, difficulty level, and potential bias, alongside a final approval by the admissions committee. Option D. Engage external educational consultants to review and revise the faculty-generated questions, allowing them to set the final question parameters based on general best practices in higher education assessment. The correct answer is C. Implement a rigorous independent review of all drafted questions by a separate committee of university academics not directly involved in teaching the tested subjects, focusing on curriculum alignment, difficulty level, and potential bias, alongside a final approval by the admissions committee. Explanation. The assessment process for Adygei State University entrance exams presents a unique challenge due to the direct involvement of university faculty in question generation and the potential for conflicts of interest. Ensuring the fairness and integrity of the examination is paramount, requiring adherence to established university regulations and ethical guidelines for academic assessment. The scenario demands a stakeholder perspective, considering the interests of applicants, faculty, and the university's reputation. The correct approach involves a multi-stage review process that prioritizes objectivity and fairness. This includes independent verification of question relevance to the curriculum, assessment of difficulty levels against established benchmarks, and a thorough check for any potential bias or unfair advantage. Adherence to Adygei State University's internal guidelines on examination development, which likely emphasize academic integrity and equal opportunity for all applicants, is crucial. This process ensures that the assessment accurately reflects the knowledge and skills required for admission without undue influence or prejudice. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the initial draft provided by the faculty members who teach the subject matter. This overlooks the potential for unconscious bias or a lack of broader perspective on what constitutes a fair and comprehensive entrance examination. It fails to incorporate independent scrutiny, a key element in maintaining academic standards and preventing situations where questions might inadvertently favor certain applicants or reflect a narrow teaching focus rather than the broader curriculum. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of development over thoroughness, accepting questions without rigorous review. This risks introducing errors, irrelevant content, or questions that are unfairly difficult or easy, thereby compromising the validity of the entrance exam. It disregards the university's responsibility to conduct a fair and equitable selection process. A third incorrect approach would be to allow external consultants with no direct knowledge of Adygei State University's specific curriculum or admission standards to dictate question content. While external expertise can be valuable, it must be guided by the university's specific academic framework and objectives. Without this alignment, the assessment may not accurately measure the competencies relevant to successful study at Adygei State University. Professionals involved in exam development should adopt a structured decision-making process. This begins with understanding the specific regulatory framework and internal guidelines of Adygei State University. Next, they should identify all relevant stakeholders and their interests. The process should then involve a systematic review of all assessment materials, incorporating checks for validity, reliability, fairness, and adherence to ethical principles. Finally, a feedback loop for continuous improvement should be established, ensuring that future assessments benefit from lessons learned. Question 8. Examination of the data shows that a report has been filed alleging that a candidate for the Adygei State University entrance exam may have received unauthorized assistance during a specific section of the examination. The university administration is pressing for an immediate decision to expedite the admissions process. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for the Adygei State University entrance exam? Option A. Immediately disqualify the candidate based on the initial report to avoid any potential complications or delays in the admissions process. Option B. Consult with the university administration to find a swift, informal resolution that prioritizes administrative expediency over a formal investigation. Option C. Conduct a thorough and impartial investigation into the alleged irregularity, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond before making any decision in accordance with the university's examination regulations. Option D. Dismiss the report without further inquiry, assuming it is unsubstantiated, to maintain the efficiency of the admissions timeline. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough and impartial investigation into the alleged irregularity, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond before making any decision in accordance with the university's examination regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's administrative needs and the ethical obligations of maintaining academic integrity and fairness during the entrance examination process. The university administration's desire for a swift and efficient resolution, potentially driven by external pressures or internal deadlines, must be balanced against the fundamental principles of a fair and unbiased examination. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made upholds the integrity of the entrance exam and respects the rights of all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough, impartial investigation into the alleged irregularities, adhering strictly to the established procedures of the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations. This approach prioritizes fairness and due process for all candidates. It requires gathering all relevant evidence, interviewing involved parties, and making a decision based solely on the findings and the university's examination rules. This upholds the ethical obligation to ensure a level playing field and maintain public trust in the examination process. The regulatory justification lies in the Adygei State University entrance exam's commitment to transparency, fairness, and the prevention of academic misconduct, as outlined in its internal statutes and examination guidelines. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disqualifying the candidate based on a single, unverified report fails to adhere to the principles of due process and presumption of innocence. This action would be a regulatory failure, as it bypasses the required investigation and evidence gathering stipulated by the university's examination framework. It also represents an ethical failure by acting punitively without establishing guilt, potentially causing irreparable harm to the candidate's academic future. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the report as unsubstantiated without any form of inquiry, is also a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This inaction allows potential irregularities to go unaddressed, undermining the integrity of the entire examination process and violating the university's duty to maintain fair and secure admissions. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a disregard for the principles of accountability. A third incorrect approach, which is to consult with the administration for a quick resolution without a formal investigation, prioritizes administrative convenience over procedural fairness. This is a regulatory failure because it deviates from established protocols for handling examination irregularities. Ethically, it compromises the impartiality of the examination process and could be perceived as an attempt to suppress or manipulate the outcome eroding trust in the university's admission system. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, acknowledge and document the reported irregularity. Second, consult the relevant Adygei State University entrance exam regulations and internal policies to understand the prescribed procedures for handling such matters. Third, initiate a fair and impartial investigation, gathering all necessary evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond. Fourth, make a decision based strictly on the evidence and the established rules, ensuring that the outcome is consistent, transparent, and defensible. Finally, document the entire process and the rationale for the decision. Question 9. Assessment of the appropriate response by an Adygei State University Admissions Committee member when observing a candidate exhibiting unusual behavior during the entrance examination, which might suggest an attempt to gain an unfair advantage, while adhering strictly to the university's entrance exam regulations. Option A. Inform other candidates about the observed behavior to gauge their reactions. Option B. Make a note of the behavior but take no immediate action, assuming it is not a serious issue. Option C. Immediately report the observed behavior to the examination proctor for investigation according to university procedures. Option D. Discreetly approach the candidate and inquire about their behavior to understand the situation. The correct answer is C. Immediately report the observed behavior to the examination proctor for investigation according to university procedures. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic success and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The entrance exam is designed to assess a candidate's genuine knowledge and aptitude, and any deviation from fair assessment undermines this purpose and the credibility of Adygei State University. The challenge lies in identifying and addressing potential breaches of academic integrity without unfairly penalizing legitimate candidates or creating an environment of distrust. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and evidence-based investigation into any suspected irregularities. This aligns with the principles of fairness and due process, which are fundamental to any educational institution's regulatory framework. Specifically, Adygei State University's entrance exam regulations would mandate that all candidates be evaluated on their own merit, and that any form of academic dishonesty be investigated according to established procedures. This approach ensures that the integrity of the examination process is upheld, and that admission decisions are based on accurate assessments of candidate qualifications. An incorrect approach that involves immediate disqualification based on unsubstantiated suspicion fails to adhere to the principles of natural justice and the university's own procedural guidelines for handling academic misconduct. Such an action would be arbitrary and could lead to a wrongful exclusion of a deserving candidate, potentially resulting in legal challenges and reputational damage to the university. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the suspected irregularities to avoid potential conflict or administrative burden, directly violates the university's responsibility to maintain academic standards. This inaction allows for potential breaches of integrity to go unaddressed, eroding the fairness of the entrance exam for all applicants and compromising the university's commitment to admitting qualified students. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a systematic approach. First, gathering all available information and evidence related to the suspected irregularity. Second, consulting the relevant Adygei State University entrance exam regulations and internal policies on academic integrity. Third, initiating a formal investigation process as outlined in these regulations, ensuring the candidate has an opportunity to respond to any allegations. And finally, making a decision based on the findings of the investigation and the established rules, prioritizing fairness, objectivity, and the integrity of the admission process. Question 10. Which approach would be most appropriate for the Adygei State University Admissions Committee when evaluating candidates for undergraduate programs, ensuring adherence to the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations and ethical admission standards? Option A. Conducting extensive, unstructured interviews with candidates to gauge their personality and perceived potential, with interview performance being the primary determinant. Option B. A comprehensive evaluation considering the entrance exam results, academic transcripts, extracurricular activities, and a well-articulated personal statement, all assessed against the university's stated admission criteria. Option C. solely relying on the highest score achieved on the Adygei State University entrance exam to determine admission eligibility. Option D. Prioritizing candidates who demonstrate significant financial capacity or have strong personal recommendations from influential figures, irrespective of their entrance exam performance. Correct answer is B. A comprehensive evaluation considering the entrance exam results, academic transcripts, extracurricular activities, and a well-articulated personal statement, all assessed against the university's stated admission criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge for prospective students and the University Admissions Committee, requiring careful consideration of how to best assess a candidate's suitability for higher education within the specific regulatory framework of the Adygei State University entrance exam. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for a comprehensive evaluation of a student's potential with the adherence to established admission criteria and ethical considerations. The university must ensure fairness, transparency, and compliance with its own internal regulations and any overarching educational policies governing university admissions in the region. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers a candidate's academic record, extracurricular achievements, and personal statement, all within the context of the Adygei State University entrance exam's stated objectives and evaluation criteria. This method is ethically sound and aligns with best practices in university admissions by seeking to identify students who not only meet academic thresholds, but also demonstrate potential for success and contribution to the university community. It respects the established examination framework by using it as a primary, but not exclusive, measure of aptitude, an approach that solely prioritizes the entrance exam score, disregarding other aspects of a candidate's profile, fails to acknowledge the multifaceted nature of academic potential, and may inadvertently exclude promising students who excel in areas not fully captured by a single test. This could be seen as a narrow interpretation of the admission requirements, potentially leading to a less diverse and representative student body. An approach that relies heavily on subjective interviews without a clear, standardized framework risks introducing bias and inconsistency into the admissions process, undermining the principle of equal opportunity. The Adygei State University entrance exam framework likely emphasizes objective measures, and an over-reliance on subjective assessment would deviate from this. An approach that considers external factors such as family connections or financial contributions over academic merit directly violates principles of fairness and meritocracy, which are fundamental to educational institutions. Such an approach would be ethically indefensible and likely contrary to the spirit and letter of any university entrance regulations. Professionals involved in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Adygei State University entrance exams regulations and the university's admission policies. This framework should then involve a systematic evaluation of each candidate against these established criteria, utilizing a combination of objective measures, like the entrance exam, and qualitative assessments that are applied consistently and fairly. Transparency in the process and a commitment to ethical conduct are paramount throughout. Question 11. Implementation of a fair and transparent entrance examination process at Adygei State University is paramount. During the examination, a fellow applicant discreetly offers you unauthorized assistance, claiming it will guarantee a higher score. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action? Option A. Accept the assistance discreetly to improve your chances of admission, rationalizing that it is a common practice and the university benefits from admitting high-scoring students. Option B. Accept the assistance, but only if the offer is made by someone who appears to be in a position of authority, assuming they have a legitimate reason for providing it. Option C. Politely decline the offer and continue with your examination independently, ensuring you adhere strictly to all stated examination rules. Option D. Ignore the offer and the individual, focusing solely on your own exam without acknowledging the situation or reporting it to the examination authorities. The correct answer is C. Politely decline the offer and continue with your examination independently, ensuring you adhere strictly to all stated examination rules. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge for prospective students applying to Adygei State University, specifically concerning the ethical implications of academic integrity during the entrance examination process. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the desire to succeed with the imperative to uphold honesty and fairness. A student's decision in such a situation reflects their understanding of ethical principles and their commitment to academic integrity, which are foundational values for any educational institution. The correct approach involves a steadfast commitment to academic honesty, refusing any form of assistance that could be construed as cheating. This aligns directly with the foundational principles of academic integrity, as expected by Adygei State University and generally by educational bodies worldwide. Specifically, adhering to the examination rules and regulations, which implicitly or explicitly prohibit any form of unauthorized assistance, is paramount. This approach ensures a fair assessment of the student's own knowledge and abilities, respecting the efforts of other candidates and the integrity of the examination process itself. It demonstrates personal integrity and a commitment to earning admission through merit. An incorrect approach would be to accept or utilize the offered assistance. This action constitutes academic dishonesty, a serious ethical and regulatory violation. It undermines the fairness of the examination, devalues the achievements of honest candidates, and compromises the credibility of the university's admission process. Such behavior directly contravenes the expected standards of conduct for all applicants and would likely lead to disqualification and potential future academic repercussions. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the offer but not report it. While not actively participating in cheating, failing to report a violation of examination rules can be seen as tacit approval or a lack of commitment to upholding the integrity of the process. This inaction can also have negative consequences, as it allows potential misconduct to go unchecked. The professional decision-making process in such a situation requires a clear understanding of ethical boundaries and university regulations. A student should first recognize the offer of assistance as a violation of academic integrity. They should then firmly decline the offer, clearly stating their commitment to completing the exam honestly. If the situation persists or involves a more serious breach, reporting the incident to the examination proctor or relevant university authority, following established procedures, is the responsible course of action. This proactive stance demonstrates a commitment to ethical conduct and the preservation of a fair academic environment. Question 12. The efficiency study reveals that a faculty member on the Equipment Procurement Committee has a close personal relationship with the owner of a company bidding for a significant contract. This relationship was not disclosed to the university's procurement department. According to the regulatory framework and guidelines for Adygei State University entrance exam, which of the following actions is the most appropriate professional response? Option A. Faculty member should proceed with the evaluation process, assuming their professional judgment will not be compromised by the personal relationship. Option B. The faculty member should immediately disclose their personal relationship to the university's procurement department and recuse themselves from any decision-making related to that specific bid. Option C. The faculty member should subtly advocate for the company they know, believing it will ultimately benefit the university through a trusted supplier. Option D. The faculty member should wait until after the procurement decision is made to disclose the relationship, if they feel it is necessary. The correct answer is B. The faculty member should immediately disclose their personal relationship to the university's procurement department and recuse themselves from any decision-making related to that specific bid. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a potential conflict of interest for a faculty member involved in the procurement process for new university equipment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the faculty member to balance their academic responsibilities and potential personal benefit with their duty to act in the best interest of Adygei State University. Adherence to the university's internal regulations and ethical guidelines is paramount to maintaining transparency, fairness, and public trust in the procurement process. The correct approach involves immediate disclosure of the potential conflict of interest to the relevant university authority, typically the procurement department or a designated ethics committee. This action aligns with the principles of transparency and accountability mandated by Adygei State University's internal regulations on conflicts of interest and procurement ethics. By disclosing, the faculty member allows the university to implement appropriate safeguards, such as recusal from decision-making or independent oversight, ensuring that the procurement process remains unbiased and serves the university's best interests. This proactive step demonstrates professional integrity and adherence to ethical standards. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the procurement process without disclosing the relationship. This failure to disclose violates Adygei State University's regulations on conflicts of interest, which explicitly require reporting any situation where personal interests could influence professional judgment. Such an omission undermines the integrity of the procurement process, potentially leading to unfair competition, inflated costs, or the selection of suboptimal equipment, all of which are detrimental to the university. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to conceal the relationship by subtly influencing the decision-making process without formal disclosure. This is ethically reprehensible and a direct violation of the trust placed in the faculty member by the university. It not only breaches internal regulations, but also constitutes a serious ethical lapse, potentially leading to disciplinary action. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves first identifying any potential conflicts of interest, then consulting the relevant university policies and ethical codes. If a conflict is identified, the immediate and transparent disclosure to the appropriate authority is the next critical step. This allows for a structured and ethical resolution, ensuring that decisions are made in the best interest of the institution, free from undue personal influence. Question 13. During the evaluation of potential sponsorship agreements for upcoming entrance examinations, the Adygei State University Admissions Committee has identified several prospective sponsors who have expressed interest in supporting the examination process. However, some of these sponsors have also indicated a desire to see candidates they have indirectly supported gain admission. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach for the Adygei State University to adopt in managing these sponsorship relationships to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination? Option A. Accept sponsorship from all interested parties and create a separate, less rigorous admission track for candidates recommended by these sponsors to ensure their successful admission. Option B. Establish a clear policy that sponsorship funds will be used solely for the operational costs of the examination and will have absolutely no bearing on admission decisions, with all admission criteria remaining objective and uniformly applied to all candidates. Option C. Prioritize sponsors who offer the largest financial contributions and allow their recommendations to carry significant weight in the final admission decisions, while maintaining a facade of objective assessment. Option D. Accept sponsorship and use the funds to provide additional preparatory courses for candidates from sponsoring organizations, giving them an advantage in the examination. The correct answer is B. Establish a clear policy that sponsorship funds will be used solely for the operational costs of the examination and will have absolutely no bearing on admission decisions, with all admission criteria remaining objective and uniformly applied to all candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for funding and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination process. The pressure to secure financial contributions from potential sponsors, who may have vested interests in the admission of certain candidates, requires careful judgment to uphold fairness and transparency. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity and fairness of the entrance examination above any potential financial benefits. This means establishing clear, objective admission criteria that are applied uniformly to all applicants, regardless of any sponsorship arrangements. The university must ensure that the examination process is free from any undue influence or bias. This aligns with the fundamental ethical principles of academic institutions, which are to provide equal opportunity and merit-based admission. Specifically, within the framework of Adygei State University's entrance exam regulations, this approach upholds the principle of objective assessment and the prevention of conflicts of interest, as stipulated in the university's charter and the relevant federal laws governing higher education in the Russian Federation concerning admission procedures. An incorrect approach would be to allow sponsorship to influence admission decisions. This could manifest as preferential treatment for candidates associated with sponsors, such as adjusting admission scores or creating separate admission tracks. Such actions would violate the principle of equal opportunity and meritocracy, undermining the credibility of the university and its entrance examinations. This directly contravenes the Adygei State University's admission regulations, which mandate a transparent and competitive selection process. Furthermore, it could lead to legal challenges and reputational damage, as it violates the spirit and letter of Russian federal laws on education that emphasize fairness in admissions. Another incorrect approach would be to accept sponsorship without establishing clear guidelines on how it might interact with the admission process, leading to a perception of impropriety. While not directly altering admission decisions, a lack of transparency and clear boundaries can create an environment where favoritism is suspected, eroding trust in the examination's fairness. This fails to meet the ethical standard of maintaining public confidence and adhering to the spirit of fair competition, which is implicitly required by the Adygei State University's commitment to academic excellence and integrity. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough review of existing university regulations and relevant legislation. It requires open communication among relevant stakeholders, including the admissions committee, the university administration, and potentially legal counsel, to establish clear policies that safeguard the integrity of the entrance examination. Prioritizing ethical conduct and adherence to regulatory frameworks over short-term financial gains is paramount for the long-term reputation and credibility of the institution. Question 14. System analysis indicates that an applicant to the Adygei State University's Faculty of Engineering has achieved excellent scores in physics and chemistry, but a significantly low score in mathematics, which is a core subject for the program. The applicant's file includes a medical certificate detailing a severe illness that coincided with the mathematics examination period. Considering Adygei State University's entrance exam framework, which approach best balances academic integrity with a fair evaluation of the applicant's potential. Option A. Admit the applicant without further consideration of the mathematics score, assuming the strong performance in other subjects compensates for the weakness. Option B. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's entire academic record and supporting documentation, giving due consideration to the documented illness as a mitigating factor for the mathematics score, and potentially recommending foundational mathematics support if admitted. Option C. Request the applicant to submit a portfolio of their extracurricular achievements to demonstrate their overall capabilities beyond academic scores. Option D. Reject the applicant outright due to the insufficient mathematics score, as it falls below the minimum threshold for the Faculty of Engineering. The correct answer is B. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's entire academic record and supporting documentation, giving due consideration to the documented illness as a mitigating factor for the mathematics score, and potentially recommending foundational mathematics support if admitted. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in university admissions where an applicant's academic record, while strong in some areas, shows a significant weakness in a core subject crucial for the chosen program. The challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic rigor and fairness with its desire to attract diverse talent and provide opportunities. The admissions committee must navigate potential biases, ensure consistent application of criteria, and uphold the integrity of the admission process, all while adhering to Adygei State University's specific entrance regulation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a holistic review of the applicant's profile, considering the mitigating factors for the poor performance in mathematics, such as the documented illness during the examination period. This approach aligns with Adygei State University's potential guidelines that allow for consideration of extenuating circumstances, provided they are properly substantiated. It demonstrates a commitment to fairness and individual assessment, recognizing that a single poor performance, if adequately explained, should not necessarily disqualify an otherwise promising candidate. This method respects the spirit of the entrance exam regulations by allowing for a nuanced evaluation rather than a rigid, purely numerical cutoff. Incorrect approach is analysis. Automatically rejecting the applicant based solely on the mathematics score, without considering the documented illness, fails to adhere to principles of fairness and may contradict university policies that allow for consideration of extenuating circumstances. This approach prioritizes a single data point over a comprehensive evaluation, potentially overlooking a candidate who could succeed in the program with appropriate support. Admitting the applicant without any further scrutiny or consideration of the mathematics weakness, despite the documented illness, could undermine the academic standards of the program. While compassion is important, the university must ensure that admitted students possess the foundational knowledge required for success. This approach risks admitting a student who may struggle significantly, potentially leading to academic difficulties and a negative experience for both the student and the university. Requesting additional, unrelated documentation, such as a portfolio of creative writing, deviates from the established admission criteria for the chosen program. This action is arbitrary and does not address the specific academic concern regarding mathematics. It suggests an attempt to find alternative justifications for admission rather than a systematic evaluation based on the program's requirements and the applicant's documented circumstances. Professional reasoning. Professionals in university admissions should adopt a structured decision-making process. This involves 1. Understanding and strictly adhering to the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations and any associated guidelines for evaluating applicants. 2. Conducting a thorough review of all submitted documentation, paying close attention to any evidence of extenuating circumstances that may have impacted academic performance. 3. Evaluating the applicant's strengths and weaknesses in the context of the specific program's requirements. 4. Applying admission criteria consistently and fairly across all applicants. 5. Documenting the rationale for all admission decisions, especially in cases involving borderline candidates or the consideration of special circumstances. 6. Seeking clarification from senior admissions officers or relevant academic departments if there is ambiguity in the regulations or the applicant's profile. Question 15. Performance analysis shows that applicants to the Adygei State University entrance exam often face uncertainty regarding the examination scope and format. Which of the following actions best demonstrates an ethical and appropriate approach to addressing this uncertainty while preparing for the exam? Option A. Directly contacting the university's admissions office or the examination committee to request clarification on the syllabus, question types, and format. Option B. Inquiring with current students about specific questions that appeared in previous year's exams. Option C. Purchasing study guides from unofficial online vendors that claim to have insider information about the exam content. Option D. Attempting to find and share exam papers that may have been leaked online. The correct answer is A. Directly contacting the university's admissions office or the examination committee to request clarification on the syllabus, question types, and format. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to the Adygei State University entrance exam by requiring them to understand the foundational principles of academic integrity within the context of a university admissions process. The core difficulty lies in distinguishing between acceptable forms of seeking clarification and unacceptable forms of academic dishonesty, particularly when faced with the pressure of an entrance examination. Careful judgment is required to navigate the ethical boundaries of information gathering. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves seeking clarification directly from the examination organizers or official university resources regarding the scope and format of the exam. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity by demonstrating a commitment to understanding the requirements through legitimate channels. Adygei State University, like any reputable institution, expects applicants to adhere to ethical standards, which includes obtaining information transparently and avoiding any actions that could be construed as an attempt to gain an unfair advantage. This approach respects the examination's integrity and the university's admission policies. Incorrect approaches analysis, seeking specific questions or answers from current students or unauthorized sources, constitutes academic dishonesty. This violates the principle of fair competition and undermines the validity of the entrance examination. Such actions are unethical and would likely lead to disqualification from the admission process, as they demonstrate a lack of personal merit and an intent to circumvent the established evaluation criteria. Attempting to access or share exam content before or during the examination period is a severe breach of academic integrity. This is not merely unethical but also potentially illegal, depending on the specific regulations of Adygei State University regarding examination security. It directly compromises the fairness and reliability of the assessment process. Consulting unauthorized study materials that are not officially sanctioned by the university for preparation is problematic. while preparation is encouraged. Using materials that might inadvertently contain leaked or privileged information, or materials that are not aligned with the official syllabus, can lead to an unfair advantage or misdirected study efforts, thus not reflecting genuine understanding. Professional reasoning. When faced with uncertainty about an entrance examination, a prospective student should always prioritize direct, official communication channels. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the source of uncertainty. 2. Determining the official channels for clarification, e.g., admissions office, examination committee. 3. Formulating clear, concise questions to seek information. 4. Avoiding any actions that could be perceived as seeking an unfair advantage or engaging in dishonest practices. This systematic approach ensures that all actions are transparent, ethical, and in compliance with the university's regulations. Question 16. Process analysis reveals that during the Adygei State University entrance exam admission cycle, a candidate's submitted portfolio contains a minor administrative error in one supporting document, which, if strictly interpreted, could lead to disqualification. However, the candidate's academic performance in the entrance examinations is exceptionally high, exceeding the average score significantly. The admissions committee is considering how to proceed. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical principles governing the Adygei State University entrance exam? Option A. Proceed with the candidate's admission after a thorough review confirms their exceptional examination scores, while noting the minor administrative error for internal record keeping and implementing a process to address such errors in future cycles. Option B. Immediately disqualify the candidate based on the strict interpretation of the administrative error in their submitted documentation, regardless of their examination performance. Option C. Grant the candidate provisional admission, subject to them rectifying the administrative error within a short, specified timeframe, while acknowledging their strong examination results. Option D. Allow the admissions committee to exercise discretionary judgment to overlook the administrative error entirely, prioritizing the candidate's high examination scores as a mitigating factor. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the candidate's admission after a thorough review confirms their exceptional examination scores, while noting the minor administrative error for internal record keeping and implementing a process to address such errors in future cycles. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for qualified applicants and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination process. The Adygei State University entrance exam regulations, as stipulated by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, mandate a fair and transparent assessment of all candidates. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to admit promising students with the absolute requirement to uphold the validity and credibility of the examination. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial evaluation of all submitted documents and examination results, adhering strictly to the established criteria outlined in the Adygei State University entrance exam regulations and the federal law on education in the Russian Federation. This approach ensures that admission decisions are based solely on merit and compliance with academic requirements, thereby upholding the principles of fairness and equal opportunity. Specifically, Article 11 of the Federal Law on Education in the Russian Federation emphasizes the right to education and the principles of non-discrimination, which are directly supported by a transparent and objective admission process. The Adygei State University entrance exam regulations further detail the specific academic and procedural requirements for admission, which must be followed without exception. An incorrect approach that prioritizes expediency over established procedures would involve overlooking minor discrepancies in documentation or allowing subjective interpretations of examination results to influence admission decisions. This would violate Article 55 of the Federal Law on Education in the Russian Federation, which prohibits any form of discrimination in education, including admission based on factors other than academic merit and compliance with admission criteria. Furthermore, such an approach undermines the integrity of the Adygei State University entrance exam, potentially leading to the admission of unqualified candidates and damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach, such as creating special exceptions for certain applicants without a clear, documented, and universally applicable justification, would contravene the principle of equal treatment for all applicants, as enshrined in the university's admission policies and general educational legislation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of all admission applications against the defined criteria. When faced with ambiguities or potential issues, the responsible admissions committee should consult the relevant sections of the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations and the federal law on education in the Russian Federation. If necessary, seeking clarification from higher university authorities or legal counsel specializing in educational law is advisable to ensure compliance and maintain the fairness of the admission process. The paramount consideration must always be the adherence to established rules and the ethical imperative to conduct a transparent and equitable examination. Question 17. Process analysis reveals that during the preparation for the Adygei State University entrance exam, a proposal is made by a senior administrative official to slightly alter the difficulty level of certain questions in the mathematics section to better align with the perceived academic preparedness of a specific cohort of applicants from a particular region, with the stated aim of improving overall university enrollment figures. This proposal is presented as a means to enhance the university's statistical performance in admissions. Option A. Propose a compromise by allowing a minor, unannounced adjustment to the scoring rubric after the examination to compensate for perceived regional differences in applicant preparedness, without altering the exam content itself. Option B. Reject the proposal outright, citing adherence to the established examination content and format as mandated by the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations, and emphasizing the principle of equal assessment for all candidates. Option C. Forward the proposal to the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation for review and approval, indicating a willingness to consider modifications if officially sanctioned. Option D. Accept the proposal and instruct the examination committee to make the suggested adjustments, prioritizing the administrative goal of improving enrollment figures and statistical performance. The correct answer is B. Reject the proposal outright, citing adherence to the established examination content and format as mandated by the Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations, and emphasizing the principle of equal assessment for all candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for qualified applicants and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination process. The Adygei State University Entrance Exam Regulations, as per the established framework for higher education admissions in the Russian Federation, mandate a fair and transparent selection process. This includes strict adherence to examination protocols and the prohibition of any actions that could compromise the validity of the results. The challenge lies in balancing the university's operational requirements with its commitment to academic meritocracy and legal compliance. The correct approach involves prioritizing the integrity of the examination process above all else, even when faced with external pressures or perceived institutional needs. This means strictly adhering to the established examination rules and procedures, which are designed to ensure fairness and prevent any form of academic dishonesty or undue advantage. Specifically, it requires the examination committee to reject any proposals that deviate from the approved examination content or format, and to ensure that all candidates are assessed under identical and equitable conditions. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity and the legal framework governing university admissions in Russia, which emphasizes merit-based selection and the prevention of corruption or favoritism. An incorrect approach would be to consider modifying the examination content or format to accommodate specific groups or to expedite the admission process. This would violate the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants and undermine the credibility of the Adygei State University entrance exam. Such actions could be construed as a breach of the university's internal regulations and potentially the broader educational legislation of the Russian Federation, which aims to ensure standardized and objective assessment. Furthermore, any deviation from the approved examination materials without proper authorization and transparent communication will be considered a serious ethical lapse, potentially leading to legal repercussions and damage to the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize the perceived administrative convenience of the admissions office over the established examination protocols. This could manifest as overlooking minor procedural irregularities or accepting incomplete documentation without proper verification under the guise of efficiency. While efficiency is desirable, it cannot come at the expense of adherence to the fundamental rules that guarantee the fairness and validity of the entrance examination. Such compromises would erode trust in the examination system and could lead to the admission of unqualified candidates, thereby compromising the academic standards of Adygei State University. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant regulatory framework, including the Adygei State University entrance exam guidelines and applicable federal laws on education. Professionals must be prepared to uphold these regulations even when faced with pressure to deviate. This requires a commitment to ethical conduct, prioritizing fairness, transparency, and academic integrity. When faced with a dilemma, professionals should consult the relevant regulations, seek guidance from superiors or legal counsel if necessary, and always err on the side of upholding the established rules and principles of fair assessment. Question 18. Process analysis reveals that an applicant for the Faculty of Economics at Adygei State University has presented a strong overall academic transcript from a foreign institution, but specific courses taken do not perfectly align with the listed prerequisites for the program. The applicant has provided a detailed explanation of their curriculum and has requested consideration based on the equivalency of their prior learning. What is the most appropriate course of action for the Adygei State University Admissions Committee? Option A. Forward the application to the Dean of Students for a discretionary decision, bypassing the standard admissions review process. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the applicant's transcript and supplementary documentation to assess the equivalency of their prior coursework against the program's prerequisites, potentially consulting with the Faculty of Economics for expert opinion, and then make a decision based on established university admission regulations. Option C. Immediately admit the applicant based on their strong overall academic performance, assuming their prior studies are sufficiently equivalent to the program's requirements. Option D. Reject the applicant outright due to the direct mismatch in specific prerequisite courses, without further investigation into the equivalency of their education. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive review of the applicant's transcript and supplementary documentation to assess the equivalency of their prior coursework against the program's prerequisites, potentially consulting with the Faculty of Economics for expert opinion, and then make a decision based on established university admission regulations. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in university admissions where an applicant's academic record, while strong, may not fully align with the specific program's prerequisites due to unique circumstances. The professional challenge lies in balancing the university's commitment to academic standards and fairness with the need to consider individual applicant merit and potential, especially when dealing with international qualifications. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the admission decision is both compliant with Adygei State University's internal regulations and ethical, avoiding any appearance of bias or undue influence. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation, including any supplementary materials explaining their educational background and the equivalency of their prior studies. This approach prioritizes adherence to Adygei State University's established admission criteria and procedures, which would typically involve a designated admissions committee or department responsible for evaluating international credentials. This committee would assess whether the applicant's previous coursework and grades meet the minimum requirements for the chosen program, potentially seeking expert opinions on the comparability of foreign educational systems if necessary. This aligns with the university's regulatory framework for admissions, ensuring a standardized and equitable evaluation process for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to make an immediate decision based solely on the applicant's overall academic standing, without a detailed assessment of their specific subject matter preparation. This fails to acknowledge the university's specific program requirements and the potential need for equivalency assessment of international qualifications. Another incorrect approach would be to grant admission based on external pressure or a desire to meet enrollment targets, bypassing the established review process. This would violate principles of fairness and academic integrity, potentially undermining the quality of the student body and the university's reputation. Furthermore, accepting the applicant without verifying the accreditation of their previous institution would be a significant regulatory failure, as Adygei State University is expected to admit students from recognized educational backgrounds. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of all submitted materials against established admission criteria. If there are ambiguities or concerns regarding international qualifications, the process should include seeking clarification from the applicant and consulting with relevant academic departments or admissions experts. The decision should be documented, with clear reasoning based on the university's policies and the applicant's demonstrated qualifications. Question 19. Process analysis reveals that an applicant for the Adygei State University's Faculty of Economics has a strong academic record in mathematics and statistics, but has not completed a specific introductory economics course listed as a prerequisite. However, the applicant has demonstrated significant self-study in economic theory through online courses and participation in economics-related debate clubs, and their personal statement articulates a clear understanding of core economic principles and a compelling motivation for pursuing economics. Considering the Adygei State University's entrance exam framework and internal admission guidelines, which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Request the applicant to retake a standardized entrance exam specifically focused on introductory economics, even though they have already passed the general entrance exam. Option B. Create a special admission category for this applicant, bypassing standard review procedures to accommodate their unique profile and ensure their admission. Option C. Reject the applicant outright due to the failure to meet the explicit prerequisite of the introductory economics course, as per a strict interpretation of the admission requirements. Option D. Evaluate the applicant holistically, considering their strong quantitative background, demonstrated self-study, and clear articulation of economic understanding as indicators of potential success, potentially recommending supplementary foundational work in the first semester if admitted. The correct answer is D. Evaluate the applicant holistically, considering their strong quantitative background, demonstrated self-study, and clear articulation of economic understanding as indicators of potential success, potentially recommending supplementary foundational work in the first semester if admitted. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in university admissions where an applicant's academic record, while strong, may not perfectly align with the most traditional pathways for a specific program. The professional challenge lies in balancing the university's stated admission criteria with the potential of a promising candidate who demonstrates transferable skills and a clear passion for the field. Adygei State University, like any academic institution, operates under its own set of internal regulations and guidelines for admissions, which are designed to ensure fairness, academic rigor, and the selection of students most likely to succeed. The entrance exam framework for Adygei State University would therefore dictate the acceptable methods for evaluating applicants, especially when faced with non-standard profiles. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers the applicant's overall profile against the spirit and intent of the admission requirements, rather than a rigid, literal interpretation. This means recognizing that a strong performance in related subjects, demonstrated initiative through extracurricular activities or personal projects, and a compelling statement of purpose can indicate a high likelihood of success, even if the applicant hasn't followed a perfectly prescribed academic path. This approach is justified by the university's likely internal guidelines that permit flexibility in exceptional cases, aiming to attract diverse talent and acknowledge that academic potential can manifest in various ways. It aligns with the ethical principle of fairness, ensuring that all applicants are assessed on their merits and potential to contribute to the university community. An incorrect approach would be to strictly adhere to a narrow interpretation of the admission criteria, rejecting the applicant solely because their prior coursework doesn't precisely match a predefined list. This fails to acknowledge the university's potential for nuanced evaluation and overlooks the possibility that the applicant possesses the foundational knowledge and motivation to excel. Ethically, this rigid stance could be seen as unfair, potentially barring a capable student due to a technicality rather than a genuine lack of preparedness. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass established admission procedures entirely to accommodate the applicant, perhaps by creating a special exception without proper justification or documentation. This undermines the integrity of the admissions process, setting a precedent that could lead to future inconsistencies and challenges to fairness. Such an action would violate the university's internal regulations regarding standardized admission processes and could be perceived as favoritism. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the university's admission regulations and guidelines. When faced with an applicant who presents a unique profile, the admissions committee or responsible officer should first consult the official documentation to understand the scope of discretion allowed. If the guidelines permit a holistic review or consideration of equivalent qualifications, then the applicant's entire profile should be evaluated. This involves assessing their academic achievements in context, their demonstrated interest and aptitude for the program, and their potential to succeed. If the situation falls outside the clearly defined parameters, the professional should seek guidance from senior members of the admissions committee or relevant university administration to ensure adherence to policy and ethical standards. The ultimate goal is to make a decision that is both fair to the applicant and consistent with the university's commitment to academic excellence and integrity. Question 20. The evaluation methodology shows that an applicant for the Adygei State University entrance exam has submitted a personal statement that highlights extensive volunteer work and leadership roles, which are not reflected in their official academic transcript or provided extracurricular activity forms. The admissions committee is reviewing this application. Which of the following actions best upholds the integrity of the Adygei State University admissions process and ensures fair treatment of the applicant? Option A. Contacting the applicant's previous educational institution to inquire about the discrepancy without informing the applicant of the specific concern. Option B. Immediately disqualifying the applicant due to the discrepancy between their personal statement and submitted forms. Option C. Accepting the personal statement at face value and proceeding with the application review without further inquiry into the claimed activities. Option D. Requesting official documentation from the organizations where the applicant claims to have volunteered and held leadership positions to verify these activities. Correct answer is D. Requesting official documentation from the organizations where the applicant claims to have volunteered and held leadership positions to verify these activities. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a scenario where an applicant for the Adygei State University entrance exam has provided information that appears to be inconsistent with their academic record, potentially indicating an attempt to mislead the admissions committee. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to admitting qualified students with the ethical obligation to treat all applicants fairly and to investigate potential academic dishonesty thoroughly but impartially. The admissions committee must avoid making hasty judgments while also upholding the integrity of the entrance process. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based review of the applicant's submitted materials, cross-referencing them with official academic transcripts and any other verifiable documentation. This approach is justified by the Adygei State University's internal regulations on admissions, which mandate a thorough verification of applicant credentials to ensure fairness and academic rigor. Ethically, this aligns with principles of due process and the avoidance of arbitrary decision-making. The university has a responsibility to its existing student body and faculty to maintain high academic standards, which begins with a robust admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the applicant based on the initial suspicion without further investigation. This fails to adhere to the university's procedural fairness requirements and could lead to an unjust outcome if the discrepancy is due to a simple administrative error or misunderstanding. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook the discrepancy entirely, assuming good faith without due diligence. This compromises the integrity of the admissions process and could allow unqualified or dishonest applicants to gain admission, undermining the university's reputation and academic standards. A third incorrect approach would be to confront the applicant aggressively without a clear understanding of the facts or a defined process for addressing such discrepancies, which could be perceived as unprofessional and potentially lead to legal challenges. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes factual verification, adherence to established procedures, and ethical considerations. This involves 1. Identifying the discrepancy and its potential implications. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines for handling such situations. 3. Gathering all necessary documentation and evidence. 4. Providing the applicant with an opportunity to clarify or explain the discrepancy, if appropriate and within policy. 5. Making a decision based on a comprehensive review of all facts and in accordance with university regulations.